Okie dokie, we are live. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Right, I am just getting my bearings. Woke up a little late, continuing to see Bitcoin dropping. Now, Nvidia could be looking for a breakout, but I just want to take a look at the moving averages and everything. We have the CB consumer confidence coming out in an hour, so that's going to be pretty much the big data set for today. Be going over that soon. We've been seeing the video holding the same sort of pattern where, and by same pattern, I mean with the SPY, where it's been holding this super strong consolidation range and starting to look like you could have that upward breakout within the 5 mile right there. Ever, just want to look at this on multiple different time frames. On the weekly time frame, we're seeing sorry, I'm just taking a look at the video and everything really quick. Good morning, everybody. Can anybody hear me right now? I have to restart my stream if not. I've been having some problems with this one program on my computer that my microphone works with, so it says it's working on my end, but okay, all right. Thank you. Sorry. I have probably about a minute delay, so I didn't get to see that until just now. Okay, so stream is working. Going to just very quickly look over pretty much the whole market. I want to take a look at Nvidia though, because obviously we do have the earnings tomorrow. We will go over it in the morning tomorrow as well. Just really want to get a bearing for day though. What I'm trying to determine is if we're really going to see Nvidia bounce or not. Now, it's kind of in a position to where it can bounce or drop, which that's lovely, of course. Um, with that said, we've been seeing the price really stick below this 50 mile range for quite a while now. And starting to see the 5 mile pull out of it, which is somewhat of a bullish signal. However, it's still very close to both the 10 mile, the 20 mile, and the 50 mile. So a rejection here can obviously, you know, cause those levels to be breached, which then would turn this again very bearish. So it's really built for that upward breakout if we have extremely good news you can see, there's that cup and handle positioning very well for that breakout. Um, but again, if we do have bad news with the earnings, it's also in that position to break through those moving averages and pull down. That doesn't help us a lot though, in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, we're trying to find important signals here. Oh, no worries, no worries. And good morning, everybody. Okay, so main things we want to cover today is that today's going to be not the biggest data day, but it is pretty much the second biggest data day of the week. Um, Primarily because of that CB consumer confidence coming out in about an hour now. With that said, the next two trading sessions are pretty much going to have a lot of chop, very likely. Obviously because, we have NVIDIA in the after hours tomorrow. That's going to be very, very huge for the market overall. Even though I'm still leaning bearish, I still do think that we have far too many bearish signals present right now, especially within the whole carry trade. Sorry if I sound tired. I'm trying to halfway wake up while doing this. Um, the yen right now is at an extremely, extremely dangerous range. And I'm going to pull up the weekly time frame just to really illustrate this. And I did this in last night's video, the last few videos, but I know not everybody has time to watch those. This was the 2024 carry trade unwind. So when the yen was extremely weak, the Bank of Japan has to intervene. So they'll sell securities, they'll sell crypto, whatever they have, they will buy the dollar, or sell it for the dollar, obviously. And then with the dollar, they will then buy the yen. So the dollar will drop in value, yen will gain in value, and that's really kind of the position we're at right now, is that we're extremely, extremely low. And each time we get down to this range, we see, a very large intervention from the Bank of Japan. We also have continued selling within Bitcoin, which again, this is starting to create that inverse cup to the downside. Now, overall, I don't care about Bitcoin too much, but I do care about it because it's a very, institutionally traded security. Pretty much all of Bitcoin is owned by institutions right now, so I do think that even though they are pushing things down, they're really trying to load up for the long end. Um, I really am bullish on Bitcoin in the long run, but we do have to wait for the selling to continue. We do have to wait for some of these conditions to ease up a little bit, and especially this carry trade to unwind a little bit. Now, there's been talks where the Bank of Japan is talking about not doing a rate hike for their next meeting, which is, that's totally understandable. I believe they just did a rate hike um their last meeting or the meeting prior. So they don't have to rush that process, but they have not been seeing the strength within their currency, and this is telling us very clearly. So, there's that concern there. And while that concern is there, I'll pull it up with the SPY really quick just to show when that happens. But there's that unwinding in 2024, and there was that unwinding in early 2025. So, what type of selling will the next unwinding be? Will it be a little small candle like that, which this was still about $40 of selling, or will it be something major, like what we saw in early 2025? So that's something I'm very, very aware of right now, is that conditions are extremely, extremely tight for that to occur. Um, while those conditions are present, we have to be extremely, extremely, extremely cautious of trying to be bullish on tech and everything else because that's exactly what happens is they push these moves to where, and this is the SPY again daily time frame, they push these moves to where it looks extremely bullish in here. As you guys probably all remember, we've had multiple upper Bollinger rejections here. We had this first one, so one, two, three, and four. This fourth one wasn't really as much of a upper Bollinger rejection. Um, it just pushed above the 5 mile and everything and then pulled back down. It wasn't really too close to pushing the upper Bollinger, but many rejections of that upside. And on the downside is that we haven't been rejecting that lower Bollinger. We've been actually going and aiming for it, which is really telling me that the market's trying to position itself for, you know, bearish long term. We have all of our moving averages getting very close to pulling underneath this 50 mile range. Last time we had the 20 mile pull underneath the 50 mile, and I'll explain why it's even more bearish up here in just a moment. But the last time we had that occur, that was during this major selling in early 2025. So I'm being very cautious of that. And something else I'm being very cautious too is that if we don't have an extremely large bounce up here very soon, is that our moving averages and conditions are getting extremely bearish before we even see the major selling happen yet. Um, when we started selling or when we started seeing the 20 mile crossing below the 50 mile here, we were already starting to sell off for about a week and a half. Okay, the SPY already dropped from about that 606 range to, I mean, it was already down to the 560-ish range by that point. So it was already losing a whole $30, $40 when we were seeing that 20 mile actually crossing downward. So they were already very well into their bearish move. For us, we can see the beginning of this bearish move building at the very beginning of this downtrend, which really create a bear market. That's kind of what I'm expecting here if we don't have a super large bounce. Last time we had a major bear market was in 2022, and so it was right in here. So I remember trading it. And how we know that it turned into a major bear market, we had all of our moving averages cross well below that 50-day moving average, and they continued crossing downward, and we saw all of our moving averages cross below that 200 mile. So that's really what signified that bear market. Um, but the very beginning stages of a bear market are when you start seeing all the short-term moving averages cross underneath that 50-day moving average and hold that position. Okay. Something else that I want to bring up really quick, and I'll read comments and everything after that, and then we will look into scalps, is that we have our 200-day moving average coming up very soon here. Last time we were at that level was pretty much on the sell-off of 2025. Now, for the market, generally with the 200 mile range, this is something that the market wants to test and bounce off of. If we're starting to get all the bearishness that I'm assuming that we potentially could be getting in here, then potentially we could be going even further below this 200 mile range. This is really where I'm targeting right now. We have a large chunk of liquidity right here. I'm going to pull up the drawing. It's going to look like a mess. I do apologize. It's this red box of liquidity that we're really targeting for the downside. This is if NVIDIA's guidance isn't good, if tech and AI are going to continue cooling down for quite a while. Okay, then we would be targeting that large inverse cup. towards this downside. Okay, let's see. Any comments? Not yet. Okay, we will continue then. So that's really what we're targeting is that downside. Going over this madness here really quick because this is actually very important. These structures, and let me go ahead and pull up a square really quick, are all extremely measured moves. And by measured moves, I mean that when we see the upside buying here, we see this liquidity taken, and towards the downside, it's filled almost to the exact point. Looking at the actual downside candle fills all the way up towards the upside, so that selling is filled out. Towards the downside again, we see this candle in here, entirely filled out with this buying candle. And with this downside, we have not seen the full upside move yet. Okay. Um, because again, with this downside here, the upside from this would be all the way basically right at that 700. If we're going to get that full upside move. If not, if we're going to continue downward, then we have this bit of buying right here that needs to be filled out. We only filled out half of it with this selling right here. So technically, we still have half of this to fill out. Um, we can fill that out to the bottom side, which if we do, that will cause us to break below this consolidation channel, which we have not done since I want to say it was December. Yeah, it was December 17th. Okay, so we've been trading in this very, very locked channel for a long time now. Um, Again, market is really in a position to pull down and break downward. Or if we see Nvidia do very well, they can take that candle to the upside. So structurally, we're seeing this being a very, very measured move. Um, but again, we're at the position of either we're going to finish that candle to the upside or we're going to break that structure and finish out that selling with the buying that we saw earlier within this entire structure. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing. Um, I kind of need to do this example sometime with actual Legos because it just doesn't make sense without that. Um, with that said, let's go ahead and start looking for scalps. We have about a little over 15 minutes until the market starts. So overall, um, going over the day, let's just kind of see if we're overly bullish or bearish in one direction. We turn off the drawings here. So Bitcoin selling off, that's a bearish signal. We have the dollar pulling upward. This is overall a bearish signal. Um, but in the current setting, this can be somewhat of a bullish signal. So just be cautious of that. The reason why it's a bullish signal is because this goes against the carry trade. Um, as long as that carry trade is not unwinding, then we can continue pushing upward. So be aware of that. Let's see our precious metals. Gold still looks absolutely fine in here. And this is daily time frame currently. I will swap over to the 5 minute in just a few seconds here, but just want to get the bearing on the day. Market on HIG, nothing spectacular, not really seeing major buying, not really seeing major selling. The daily candles in here are starting to show a little weakness. So potentially we can start seeing some downside within HIG. Within liquid, we have been expecting some major downside. We did actually get a candle up to the upside, so That does show some strength within the market. Oil, I'm looking for this to pull down, but that's a whole nother story. Again, we see this weakness within the ES main. NVIDIA, we talked about that earlier. It is sort of poised to break out. We do have this cup and handle structure here. Um, but again, with where the moving averages were, it can pull downward as well. So it's really set for their earnings to either break out or pull down. QQQ, we have tons of very, very bearish structure here. Even on the hourly time frame, we have head and shoulders, nothing super bullish. We have potentially this double bottom, but that does not look very convincing. It looks very convincing that we could get an additional micro head and shoulders in here. Sorry, that is literally the worst drawn head and shoulders I've ever done, but you understand the concept. So that's tech. Let's go ahead and look at semiconductors and turn off the drawings because those don't matter right now. Semiconductors sort of in the same position with NVIDIA. Really, poised to break out, but again, the moving averages are close enough to where if we have the rejection within NVIDIA, we can pull down and, really see some major weight to the downside. This would form an inverse cup, and all that selling or all that this buying we've been seeing within semiconductors would, be used against us at that point. So TLT, seeing a lot of buying in the pre-market. Now, generally, I wouldn't, count TLT as a signal to be bullish or bearish against. However, in the current narrative of everything with the again, carry trade in the situation where it can unwind very quickly, we have been seeing a lot of buying within TLT, and very, very likely a lot of this buying is from, that carry trade. So buying in TLT right now does sort of correlate with that carry trade unwinding a little bit. Um, so be cautious of that. I kind of take this as a bearish signal for the market. And our UVIX and UVIXY weak in the market, but that doesn't matter too much. We'll see the VVIX when it opens. Again, the VVIX has been super, super elevated. It's been pushed well above this 98 range, and it doesn't look like it wants to calm down anytime soon. So as long as we're above that 98 range, we will be selling within the, overall equities. Okay, so overall things look bearish on the day, but that does not mean that we can't see buying. So going over the 5-minute time frame, and this is where we're going to look for a scalp. We're looking for on the 5-minute time frame, looking for a push below the lower Bollinger or above the upper Bollinger. And that's how we will identify what we will want to short or take a call on. Um, with our overall narrative being bearish on the day, we will be trying to aim for more of a bearish position rather than trying to buy a bullish call. I generally tend to not want to trade opposite the direction that I'm seeing a lot of the sentiment carry towards. For example, we have Broadcom here. Broadcom is seeing some selling in the pre-market. However, would you want to buy a call into that with all the potential bearish conditions? Probably not. This would be something I would want to short rather than try to aim a call into. So that's kind of the sentiment we have in mind right now, is that even though there can be bullishness, we don't want to really fight the tide here. Go ahead and check the comments in just a second, but I just want to very quickly see if we can find a decent scalp setup. Potentially we have something nice with gold here. And for gold, we would be bullish. So with this pre-market selling, this could be a very, very opportune time to take a call to the upside. Seeing that sentiment within gold as well, the actual GLD ETF. It's okay. You don't have to trade perfectly opposite. You see, the thing is that, once we start pushing into that lower Bollinger, it totally creates the conditions where we can see that flip to the upside. Because generally when we're pushing to the lower Bollinger, that's when we want to be buying calls. Um, it's just, with the whole sentiment and everything, I've seen this turn into a bad situation. Like if we were to look at SPY, pretending this is SPY for a moment, with all those, potentially bearish conditions present, say we buy that call, say this pushes down to the lower Bollinger, we buy the call, start buying up to the upside. Yeah, that can be a scalp. Yeah, that can pull to the upper Bollinger and give us, a very potential, quality trade. However, the sentiment is still bearish, so it's not like we're going to be buying up from the lower Bollinger to the upper Bollinger. Can it happen? Absolutely. Have we seen it happen? Absolutely. It's just not something we generally are trying to aim for. Because the sentiment on the day is telling us that, bearish conditions are, very present. So when we're seeing this upside, if we're seeing the calls go from the lower Bollinger to the 20 month, then, there's a very large potential that we could see a rejection there to the downside rather than seeing a lot of that weight to the upside. This would be kind of the same situation, uh, with the bearish conditions present currently. If we saw SPY and tech calls, or excuse me, SPY and tech pushing the upper Bollinger, that would give us the perfect opportunity to short because we do see a lot of bearishness within the market. And at that opportunity, that would be, a really safe trade to have a ton of room on. Ideally, I'm not trying to force trades. Um, Not implying that you are, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm not trying to force trades at all. For scalps, I want them to be very, very simple. I want it to be moving pretty much exactly in the type of price action that I'm looking for throughout the overall day. And if the bearish or if the sentiment is bearish overall, then likely overall, um, bearish contracts will carry more weight throughout the scalps. Not always true, um, but again, that's the idea. Now, Netflix here actually could be giving us a really nice trade. Um, Not really something I scalp too much though. Oracle has a very nice cup and handle setup. Seeing a lot of this bouncing within precious metals. So again, going back to that gold trade, there can be a very quality opportunity for the call upside. QQQ, it looks like it wants to push in that lower Bollinger. Yeah, seeing a lot of these precious metals bouncing off that lower Bollinger. So we are going to be taking a look at gold calls in a second here. And I will pull this up on my phone. Fortunately, I'm not able to pull this up very well on the laptop just yet. Within the actual specs, we're seeing a, pretty decent head and shoulders here. Okay, so it is looking like gold is going to be a trade we are going to be taking. Let's get through these yields really quick. Even with the treasury yields this morning, slightly elevated, nothing super concerning though. Is the JPY very elevated, which is, extremely concerning. We have the dollar showing elevated here. That means that potentially we could be seeing the dollar selling off a little bit, which again, that would allude to some of that bearish price action due to the carry trade. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna take a look at the gold contracts because that is what is looking like. We're going to be seeing a very quality bounce. Exxon has a really nice head and shoulders formed here. Um, I'm still shorting it. I know people think I'm crazy, but it is what it is. Okay, yeah. Let's take a look at gold. So gold we want to be a little careful with. We ideally do want to see this push downward into the lower Bollinger here. However, our futures for gold is actually starting to push down into that lower Bollinger. So it could be giving us that trade within actual gold ETF. But ideally, we do want to see this push down back into this lower Bollinger, and we will be waiting for um, that to occur. Okay, we are not going to force this trade, but I want to start looking at the contracts. Just one moment while I pull those up. So we would take the 1 day contracts here. Um, there's nothing for 0 DTE, so very likely these contracts are going to be probably a couple $100 each. So be aware of that. Um, if you're looking for this exact scalp and looking for something cheaper, then let's take a look at silver. We are seeing sort of this price action within silver as well. Again, ideally, we really do want to push down into that lower Bollinger on the 5 minute time frame before you buy. If we can get that, then silver here can be a very, very, very quality scalp. Again, you'd still target that 1 DTE contract. So for gold, ideally, it's going to be pulling back down to that 468 prior to us entering. If that occurs, then we will be looking at the probably the 472 calls, okay, because we would be targeting that middle Bollinger. Okay, so we are looking for the push downward. Don't don't rush this trade. Okay. As always, I'm never ever ever going to force my trades here. If this setup does not work out like we want it to, if we do not get the push downward like we are expecting, then we will not take the setup. Um, you know, That's just simply how I do my scalps. So looking at the actual pricing, we see that the 472 calls on gold are about $300. Probably will be slightly cheaper. So it's about 340-ish currently. Now again, we want this to push down prior to us entering. Go ahead, take a look at the SPY and everything, and I want to look at the BVIX as well. It's kind of that example on SPY. Um, for example, if we bought into that upper Bollinger and we're expecting the call upside, for example, or bought into the lower Bollinger here, excuse me, and expected the call upside. Upside was absolutely there, but with the bearish conditions on the day, it, caused that selling. Granted, I know the setup wasn't really open in the, open market, but you understand what I'm saying. VVIX gaining its strength, so again, the bearish conditions are extremely present here. Let's go ahead and swing back to gold really quick. Ideally, we do want to see our push to the lower Bollinger. It's really what we're going to, um, you know, take our call upside. Contract has gone down in price quite a bit, so again, it probably will be around that 240, maybe even 250 range, for that call. So, and there's also weight within silver as well if we see that push downward. Now let's check the SPY. I want to see how deep the selling is going. I'm not really expecting the selling to continue too much further today. We do again have a lot of bearish structure within the hourly time frame, so it's absolutely can. Uh, Pulling back down to that 680.38 would be completely reasonable right here. Form that inverse cup, and then very likely throughout the majority of the day, build a handle on that inverse cup and pull back down, um, or continuation of that larger inverse cup. So very likely a bear trappy type of day, but also bull trappy as well because they're not going to give us the price action on either. Gold here on the hourly time frame does have this head and shoulders. I'm not super concerned about it overall. Again, I've been very, 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 very bullish on precious metals, but potentially this head and shoulders here could give us our downside that we're looking for to, take that quality scalp. Not seeing major buying within the yen yet, so that's telling us that overall we're not seeing the carry trade unwind just yet. We are seeing this initial process of seeing the dollar pulling upward, which that's sort of what I'm expecting to happen. I'm expecting a lot of selling to start occurring and the dollar to initially gain a lot of weight. From gaining that weight, that will then allow, people who are positioned into the dollar at that point to be able to then take the dollar and buy the yen. So really, that's the signal I'm looking for. I'm looking for a major pull downward within the dollar, which overall would generally be a bullish signal, but in this case, this is a bearish signal for us. TLT looking like it wants to create this bullish cup to the upside. That's again going or correlating with the unwinding. Exxon finally going down, thankfully. Let's check gold and silver. Again, we're just being very, very patient here. We really do want to see the push downward prior to entering calls. No reason to force a trade. We are seeing selling within HIG, and we're seeing selling within liquid a little bit, but we want to see liquid pull down pretty much to this 110 range. So we need to see a lot more selling within liquid. Good morning, everybody. I never know when people join or not. I don't have my computer set up entirely just yet. I thought I'd have my office fully set up by now, but there's been just an immense amount of work to do with it. So you can take some calls to the upside within SPY, but again, I think the conditions on the day are extremely bearish. I think that we can be getting some very, very bearish price action. And overall, I don't want to just trade into the chop. We do have this built inverse cup here. From that built inverse cup, we can see an inverse cup handle, um, which would be buying to the upside a little bit. That would probably look like a 5 mile rejection overall. The 5 mile is currently at the 684.62. So the lower bounds of the 5 mile would be at that 682 60-ish range. So if we see the upside, I would be looking at that middle Bollinger, that 682 range that would be starting to reject the 5 mile. Our VVIX continuing push upward. Silver and everything continuing to push upward. We really do want to see a rejection prior to entering calls. GLT filling that cup out. My Exxon is continuing downward. Good, good, good. Just need you to go to 142 and I will be a happy camper. Um, with that said, let's hover back to gold. Gold seeing a lot of buying. Could have entered closer to the open. But that's just really not what I'm looking for in terms of a scalp, even though we saw the opportunity there. I'm still not entirely convinced that this can't pull back downward towards this 648 range again today, though. And while we're seeing potentially some of this tech upside, this can give us some opportunities or some shorts. So within Apple, there's actually a short opportunity. You would take it from the 272 all the way down to the 268. So go ahead and look at those contracts. And those would be for the 1 DTE. There is the 267 puts, um, or the 267.5, excuse me. So those would be probably very quality to take for the scalp if you want that one. Um, I might take this opportunity, honestly. Very, very, very tempting. Yeah, I think I'm going to short this here. Okay, so I'm going to open a, let's see, the 267.5 put for 0.73. Okay, I'm in. So I'm in at 0.73. From this upper Bollinger Push, we would be looking for the middle Bollinger just for the entirely super safe contract, but there is room down all the way to the lower Bollinger here, so shorting Apple and us being in those contracts, let's go back to gold. Not seeing our push down in gold. Ideally, we want to see this 20 mile reject here, push down to the lower Bollinger, and then we can take calls to the upside. Apple, I am not concerned about this buying. This is perfectly exactly right where I like shorting stuff, so I'm very happy with those contracts right now. If we have a concern with them, we will go over it, but so far, not really. With this upper Bollinger push into the 5 mile or into the 5 minute time frame, again, this is exactly what I like shorting into. Going to add a couple more of those puts at the point. Trying to get the 0.61 on the price here. And I want to pull up the heat map really quick. It will pull up. Spies at the 20 mile. We'll go ahead and take a look at that in just a second. Our heat map looking fine. Okay. Okay, so I'm still holding my shorts on Apple. They still look absolutely fine here for me. And our puts are at 0.56. I am adding here at this 0.54. Okay, got those filled. And now we wait. Let's go ahead and look at some of the overall conditions of everything. Let's see if gold is going to give us a move down. It's not, so we just have to be patient for that. SPY pushing the upper Bollinger here. This can be a very quality short. Again, overall, I'm still bearish on the day and everything. Yeah, I'm going to be looking at some SPY shorts here. Hold on. These contracts are going to be the 0 DTEs. And from here, we're just targeting the 20 mile, so that's 682. The 682 puts are about $130 right now. Quite a lot of upside in that. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and take um, um, let's look at the VVIX first, very quickly. VVIX pulling downward within the 5-minute time frame, but still super elevated. And with it pushing into this lower Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame, that actually creates conditions for it to pull back upward. So that's going, that's correlating very well with seeing selling within the SPY and overall within tech. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take, and what I want here is I actually want the SOX S calls. Now, SOX S is so taking calls to the upside would be essentially shorting semiconductors. Um, you can take the $1.5 calls. Yeah, I'm taking them at 0.18 per. So let me pull up Success really quick. That's this. Okay, so you'd be buying the 1.5 calls. That'd be targeting this upside back to the 1.7 range, which for Success would be, a very large move. Within semiconductors, this is suggesting that we would have a rejection at this 20 mile back down to the lower Bollinger. So that's the move I'm looking for here. Let's go ahead and check SPY. Why is my brokerage app being so slow right now? Hello, okay, there we go. Got our contracts. So again, looking for the short here. Let's go back to Apple. Apple still pushing, but again, we're still targeting the 275 or the 267.5. A little bit of buying within Bitcoin, but again, with it pushing into this upper Bollinger here, it does look like it is setting up to pull downward. So this is very likely that 5 mod test to the upside that I talked about within SPY. Very likely should see a major rejection throughout SPY and tech. So within semiconductors, we're again looking for the 20 mile range to reject here. Rejection, to the downside. SPY looking for the rejection from the upper Bollinger here into the 20 mile. We do have very important data coming out in 10 minutes, so just be aware of that. That's the CB consumer confidence. The VVIX with it pushing into the lower Bollinger here. I am looking for it to pull back upward, so that is suggesting that very likely we will see volatility pick up again. I need my Exxon to continue melting, that's good. And what else we got going on? TLT. Had a little bit of selling here. That would have been a really nice call to the upside if we see it continue to push downward here in TLT. that can create a very nice call opportunity for the end of the week. Our puts starting to gain some weight here. Again, we're really looking for the 20 mile exit or below. With all the bearish conditions today, I heavily believe that we should be seeing this 5 mile rejection. Semiconductors seeing a little bit of that 20 mile rejection. So again, that's sort of exactly what we're looking for. I wish gold would have pulled down further so we could have bought in calls, but it is okay. Apple starting to see that upper Bollinger rejection. We're simply just targeting the 20 mile here, which is at the 268.98. We have the 267.5 puts, which will absolutely gain plenty of premium on the move to the downside. Liquid still seeing a lot of selling within the time of sales. I know you guys can't see it on my screen, but there's a lot of selling within the shares currently, which that is very, very indicative of selling within equities. QQQ in that short opportunity. Semiconductors still playing around the 20 mile range. Can you not hear my sound? I'm sorry, I don't know why my sound keeps cutting out. I will be getting a better microphone once I get my actual computer set up. I just have not had the opportunity yet. Looking for that to continue pushing downward. Let's check the VVIX again. VVIX, we are looking for this to start gaining some weight, so and TLT. Ideally looking for this to buy upward. Um, but if we push back into that lower Bollinger, we can take a call to the upside. It's a shame we did not get the entry that we wanted in precious metals. Would have been very, very good. And what else do we got going on here? FXY, not really buying. Dollar, not really buying or selling too much. Bitcoin still buying upward on the 5-minute time frame. Apple starting to see our rejection slightly here. So that is good. Let's check semiconductors again. Semiconductors still just building some support around the 20 mile range. Again, we're looking for that to reject downward. Apple puts down slightly, but I still fully anticipate the weight to come back to those. Our 20 mile range here is still holding out very, very well. And we're continuing to see a little weakness throughout tech and semiconductors. So QQQ, tech rejecting this 20 mile or rejecting this upper Bollinger. SPY starting to reject this upper Bollinger a little bit. BVIX just tapering, but again, do want to see it pushed upward. That will indicate that big money is hedging positions, so very, very important that we do see that. Swing around to gold really quick. Hold on. Ideally on gold and precious metals here, we're wanting a rejection off this 20 mile range down to the lower Bollinger. From that lower Bollinger, we will be taking calls to the upside. Again, I'm super, super bullish on precious metals right now, so if we get the opportunity to take the upside to them, we will. Same with silver and pretty much everything. Semiconductors, we're seeing that 20 mile slowly rejecting in here. Now, for semiconductors, ideally, we do want to see this rejection pretty much all the way down to the low of the day. Out of tech, SPY, semiconductors, everything, semiconductors have the most weight to lose. So, um, really, they're the ones that are going to be shifting the majority of the weight. Seeing that rejection a little bit within SPY. You can take the exit at the 20 mile range. That again is a very strong contract. Um, but I am looking for a deeper downside here. Apple, we're still looking for our major rejection. Sorry, I can't talk today. I super, super tired. I apologize. SPY continuing to see our rejection to that 20 mile range. So again, that would have been a very, very quality trade to take. I'm still holding my puts. I'm expecting towards that lower Bollinger on the day. So ideally, and it really depends on which way you're looking at the price action here. On the daily time frame, our 5 mile is at the 685.20. So what I'm expecting today is basically this 5 mile test to the upside and a rejection downward. From that downward rejection, um, start filling this inverse cup towards that 675. Getting hiccups mid talking. Apologize. Yeah, I think that's because of my sound program, so that will be fixed when I do fully get my office set up. I apologize for that. Just need to continue seeing further rejection. It can take a while. We're waiting on a data set right now, which does come out in 2 minutes, so that can be kind of the catalyst to push us downward. It is a very, very large data set. Looking for Exxon to continue downward. And now we're just pretty much waiting. Let's go ahead and look at the VVIX though. Starting to see the VVIX pull upward like we talked about. It pushed into the 5 minute lower Bollinger, which does create the conditions for it to turn bullishness within the VVIX turns into bearishness throughout the rest of the market. So that is holding very well. And I will pull the data up in just a moment. How's everybody's trades going so far though? Still seeing that tapering with an Apple. I'll take a look at the dollar really quick. That hasn't moved basically at all, but we are seeing this small head and shoulders forming, which can be a signal that we could be potentially seeing some of that unwinding occurring today. So really looking for that. FXY, we're looking for this to buy upward. It's actually a very good opportunity to take calls into this. Anywhere from uh, there's calls where you could take the March calls, or you can take the ones out, a few months. I have the 120-day whatever ones. IWM downward. Nvidia is seeing some of that weakness in here. Okay, let me go ahead and see the data came in as. Okay, so it came in extremely elevated this time, um, which is sort of unexpected. The previous number was at 89, and this reading came up to 91.2. The forecast was at 87.4. Again, this is still a very weak reading, but in terms of the readings over, you know, a very long period of time, let me go ahead and bring up the chart. You won't be able to see it on your end. I apologize. I mean, the CB consumer confidence, even though there has been um some upward revisions, we have been seeing this weakness for over a year now. So still extremely, extremely low with this reading. It's just a little weird because they have been doing upward revisions on it, but overall, looking good. Let's see. I want to look at CME really quick. So when major data sets come out, you can look at the CME Fed Watch to kind of gauge whether it's going to be overly bearish or bullish for the market. When the data set drops, you can look at the target rate probabilities for the next FOMC meeting. And with that, you can determine if there's going to be, um, the odds of an increased chance of a rate cut or a pause. With this data set, we saw the odds of a rate cut decrease slightly, so overall that should be bearish in terms of the price action. The market really does want to see um, rate cuts overall. So with this data not supporting that, that should be bearish on the day. That should give us our dip downward in semiconductors that we're looking for. That should give us our push downward in SPY. Let me go ahead and pull that up. And look at the VVIX really quick though. Still pushing upward. That's exactly what we're wanting to see. Semiconductors still at the 20 mile range. Excuse me. QQQ rejected the 20 mile, so that's good. That's pretty much exactly what we're wanting to see. And SPY below the 20 mile. So again, if you took that short up there, you'd be very much in the money right now. I'm still holding my put positions because I'm expecting much further downside. Within Apple, our puts are still just basically holding weight right now. Mine are down currently negative 12%. I'm still targeting this 20 mile range. Even though we're seeing it climb upward to get a little bit, we are seeing bearishness throughout the rest of the day, and very, very likely that should take Apple down with it. Let's go ahead and look at liquid. Liquid continuing to sell off. Excuse me, just had to go on a sneezing fit. I apologize. Nvidia is seeing a little buying, so that can pull our semiconductors up slightly, but we're still just hovering around this 20 mile range. Again, the overall thesis is we're expecting a rejection downward. TLT, we are looking overall for the buying to the upside. That would be a bearish signal for us here. That doesn't always correlate, just a major reminder on that. VVIX is pulling upward. That is telling us that extremely likely we will be seeing a continuation within this selling. Okay, everything looks good so far. Not cutting my puts or anything just yet. Still waiting for much further downside. FXY, we're not really seeing any major buying yet. So the whole unwinding is not occurring just yet. Big, we are still seeing weakness, but a little bit of buying is occurring. So that correlates very well with this 20 ma range. Semiconductors can be having a bounce off this 20 ma to the upside. Again, I am looking for the overall rejection of this 20 ma. And on SPY, let's see the level really quick. Hold on. SPY, we're still below the 5 ma, so remember, um, technically right now we're in the lower bounds of the 5 ma, so rejecting this range would put us below the 5 ma entirely. That would be a very bull or very bearish signal on the day, because that would be telling us that extremely likely we're getting ready to push downward into the lower Bollinger. Pushing into the lower Bollinger here would close that inverse cup back to the 675. This is on the daily time frame, not the 5 minute, by the way. So just be aware of that. But if we have continued rejection here, that is going to give us a very large move to the downside. I'm gonna go ahead and mute my mic just for a couple seconds because I just need to drink coffee and wake up for a moment. Um, I'll just be quietly going through some symbols and everything during that time, but probably just a 2-3 minute mute during that time, unless I see something super important. So I will be right back. But again, just continuing to hold my puts here. Everything looks very good on the bearish side, continuation to the downside anyway. So I'll be right back. All right, and I am back. Yeah, sorry about that. I had the mic off for a couple minutes while I drank some coffee. Um, okay, moving forward, we're expecting some chop in here. Um, just go ahead and look at the VVIX. We are seeing tapering within the VVIX. Again, if this pulls downward, that will suggest buying within the overall equities. I'm not really anticipating that. VIX is still very, very, very elevated. We do see the actual VIX itself above the $20 range, which yes, this structure looks bearish on the 5-minute time frame. But overall, the VIX being above the $20 mark is a bearish signal. TLT, we need to see buying. Seeing any of that yet? SPY semiconductors expecting this 20-mile rejection to the downside. All of those signals still look good. QQ is still looking like it wants to reject downward. Apple finally starting to have that downward rejection, so our puts are looking very good there. PST and Cree seeing a little bit of selling, which, that does allude to selling within the overall SPY and tech and everything. Squid just holding its weight, not really buying or selling too much. Continuing to see this rejection within QQQ. It's a shame that we weren't able to get our move on the precious metals this morning. Would have been really good, but like I said, I really do not force trades. Either we get our level or we'll wait. VVIX continue to pull upward, so that's what we want to see on the short side. And where is semiconductors? They are starting to pull back down below the 20 mile range again. So that's exactly what we're wanting to see. And we're wanting to see continuation within the rejection of this 20 mile on the SPY. So far, it's just holding that range. Good morning, everybody. Overall, we are bearish on the day. I'm really expecting pretty much today to be a 5 mile rejection on the SPY. I believe it'll be a 5 mile rejection on probably QQQ and semiconductors as well. USD JPY is still very, very elevated, which again, this does create the conditions for the carry trade unwind. So we are looking at that very closely. Looking for a rejection in Bitcoin, even though I don't really have any positions based off of this right now. A rejection in Bitcoin will allude to a rejection throughout the rest of equities, so that is something we are looking for. Now, Nvidia can be turning bullish here. It doesn't really look like it though, but it can aim to fill this cut back upward. And from that, it can start to try to push some way back into semiconductors. So be aware of that, but overall, I am still anticipating this to be a 20 mile rejection, heading back down towards that lower Bollinger. Same for QQQ. Seeing that price action still within semiconductors. Just need to see it carry over to the SPY and everything, and we will be good to go. It's really a shame that gold didn't open below the bottom Bollinger at the open. Instead, it did it just a few minutes prior. Would have been some massive, massive contracts there. Let's check TLT. And we do want to be seeing buying in TLT. Excuse me for yawning. Want to put you all to sleep. VVIX, we want to see pushing upward. And we don't really have any data tomorrow. Um, Pretty much from now until NVIDIA's earnings, there's really not a whole lot. So we can be seeing a decent amount of chop. So just be aware of that. But overall, the downside still looks extremely strong. Ideally, you want to see VVIX pulling above that 115 range and starting to push back up towards that 116 plus. That would be a very good signal that we will be seeing continued selling to the downside. Okay, so I think we all have the overall, aim for the day. With that said, does anybody have any questions or any symbols they want me to go over while I'm still somewhat awake? But overall, a lot of our positions are just in that period of waiting, just waiting for the chop to continue chopping downward. Seeing that sentiment throughout tech, throughout semiconductors, throughout the majority of SPY. Let's check the RSP. It would be a good signal to see um, the RSP pulling downward, especially back towards that lower or the 20 ma. Pulling towards that 20 ma would be very, very indicative that we would be seeing quite a lot of selling throughout, the upper tranches of SPY. Tech seeing a little weight pushed into it. My Apple puts are green now, so those are starting to gain some weight, even though the price hasn't moved a whole ton yet. EVIX pulling down slightly, but this is still super elevated. I talked about this I don't want to say a few weeks ago, but it probably was a few weeks ago at this point. There was a session where EVIX pulled down towards or it opened at the 100. So it was right in basically opened at the 102, pulled down. I really want to say it's right in here. It pulled down towards the 100, and no, it's right here. Okay, So it was at the 104, was pulling down towards the 102, had the price action pull down all the way towards the 138, $100.38. So it looked very close to breaking that 98 range. Breaking that 98 range would pull us into not exactly bullish territory, but it would pull us out of that very, very bearish territory. However, from hitting the $100.30 whatever cents, we just pretty much rocketed off of that. So as long as this is within that red area, the volatility can always pick back up and, we'll be right back off to the races again. So it's very hard to be bullish on overall tech and equities when we are seeing the VVIX so elevated. Nvidia might be pushing into this upper Bollinger here, so just be aware of that. But again, I am still overall expecting rejection on the day. Same for QQQ. So it was really a culmination of the last few weeks. And let me really tell you what was the signal here. So on the daily time frame, and I want to pull drawings up, but it's going to be a mess, so I apologize. Um, on the daily time frame, we had this range, okay? And this range was about 2 weeks ago, almost exactly. It was 14 trading sessions ago. So yeah, 2 weeks ago exactly, we were at this range. And on the daily time frame, this was starting to pull towards creating a cup and handle. We were looking for that cup to uh, push out towards the upside, create that upper Bollinger Move. Upper Bollinger Move here would have pushed us into the 700 plus, and from that 700 plus, we would have pushed, um, you know, into all new highs. Would have broken this consolidation channel that has been extremely, extremely strong. However, that did not occur. We saw continued selling from that range, and I'm going to turn off the drawings now, and hopefully this will make a lot more sense. But now we're seeing all of our moving averages pulling below the 50-day moving average. That's starting to become extremely, extremely bearish. Um, 2 weeks ago, that sentiment was there, but wasn't nearly as bad. We still had a large majority of the moving averages hold above the 50-mile range, and we were still in a position to where we just left that lower Bollinger. Potentially, we could be seeing quite a lot of buying to the upside, and potentially could be seeing that breakout. Um, Also had this very potential double bottom here. So there was a lot of reasons why we were seeing, potentially some major support being built in this range. With that breaking down, that's telling me that this isn't bullish structure at all. This is actually very, very bearish structure. This is wanting to just create a double top, which it did, double top into here. From this double top, it's creating this inverse cup, which is now looking to be creating an inverse handle to the downside. So there's a lot of downside that I'm seeing built here. We do have some, bullish signals mixed in with this, but we need to see a lot more bullishness. We need to see our 5-day moving average, our 10-day moving average pulled well above the 20-day moving average and held. So we basically need to see the 690 range held for a full 10 trading days. We have not been able to do that for the last, 3 months now. So the weaknesses is really starting to starting to speak louder than what the price action might be showing in here. It's showing a lot of just chopping, but this is starting to really create the conditions to where we can be entering a major bear market. If we start to see a lot further selling from here. On Apple, we have this push above basically all of our moving averages on Apple are heavily consolidated around that around that 266 range. It's push upward can be indicative of pushing to the upper Bollinger. However, generally with how moving averages work, you generally have to see the 5 mile tested between each moving average test. So if we're going to see the 10 mile broken, we generally need to see the 5 mile tested, 10 mile broken, 5 mile retested again. And then from that 5 mile being retested, then we generally see the 20 mile tested. From that 20 mile being tested, 5 mile tested again. From the 5 mile being retested, then we could start looking to the upside. So even though this looks bullish, there's still a lot of unwinding of these moving averages that really need to occur here before this can start really telling us that it wants to really push. That's why I'm heavily anticipating a lot of downside throughout a lot of symbols because there's a lot of this throughout the majority of tech, throughout the majority of semiconductors. We're seeing a lot of this very dangerous consolidation. Within HIG, we're finally starting to see a fairly large selling candle on the day. Something we've been looking for overall bearishness for a while now. We are seeing SPY obviously pushing upward. Um, don't have much to say about that yet. The conditions overall are still very bearish and just, waiting for the continuation. The next 2 days, we really don't have any data until NVIDIA's earnings, so can be seeing a lot of chop with this 5 mile range being at the 685.79. Technically, we can be testing both the lower bounds of the 5 mile and the upper bounds of the 5 mile. The upper bounds of the 5 mile should take us again a whole $1 to $2 above the actual 5 mile range. So for the day, that would take us all the way up to the 687, 80-ish range. Excuse me. So towards the 687.80 range. For that upper bounds of the 5 mile test. However, again, I'm not really anticipating this to be bullish price action overall. This should be a 5 mile rejection to the downside. But again, if we continue seeing BVIX pulling back, then that can allude to further bullishness overall. So just be very aware of that. TLT, we're not seeing buying yet, but with the data we saw within the CB consumer confidence, that doesn't exactly allude to buying within TLT. Semiconductors pushing up slightly. We are looking for this to have a rejection on the day overall. And I want to take a look at gold. Ideally, this does create a head and shoulders to push down into the lower Bollinger so that we can have a very strong buying opportunity. Bitcoin still seeing a little bit of bullishness in here, so that is alluding to bullishness within equities. Apple continuing to do its thing, still fully anticipating a push to the downside. And let's check QQQ's 5 mile. So QQQ, same type of position. The 5 mile is at 605 35. So with the price being at 607.35, that can be testing the upper bounds of that 5 mile range. So if we get a rejection off of this range on QQQ, which again, this is a very quality range to short. We're pushing into the upper Bollinger, so this is a scalp. Um, can short from that upper Bollinger to the middle Bollinger. Very quality scalp in there. Seeing Apple break down a little bit further. And let's check SPY, because SPY might also be giving us a scalp here. Can short SPY here as well. A rejection on QQQ and SPY would allude to that 5 mile rejection. Let's take a look at the VVIX. Still pushing downward, but again, on the 5 minute time frame, with it pushing into this lower Bollinger, it can create the conditions where it can buy upward, um, which would allude to selling on the overall SPY and tech. Generally, I would be entering these shorts right here, but I do have to get my daughter up very, very soon for school, so won't be able to enter, but this is exactly what I'd be looking for a short position. Um, I mean, literally everything is exactly what I'd be looking for to short the SPY, to short tech. Um, looks extremely good here. Yeah, rejection here should pull all the way back to the 5 mile range, which that would be below um the or that would be below the excuse me, pulling back to the 5 mile would be slightly above the 20 mile here. But with how we have the 5 minute time frame positioned, that would allude to pulling to the 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame, which would be below the 5 minute or the five uh excuse me, it would be below the 5 mile on the daily time frame, which would be bearish overall. So um again, still seeing a lot of conditions that can create that bearishness. Yeah, this short position on SPY and QQQ looks extremely, extremely, extremely good. And again, if you want to be safe, like the previous short, you just take it from the upper Bollinger to the 20 mile. I am expecting further rejection on the day overall, but to be extremely safe with scalps, you simply take it from either the upper or lower Bollinger towards that 20 mile. And it's a very, very, very consistent scalp where, you don't have to worry about your exits or anything. Apple, we are seeing the 20 mile pulling upward, but we're still, again, targeting that range. Ideally, we're targeting below that. Um, my puts on Apple are actually up 8% right now. So not a whole lot, but they're starting to gain some of that weight. Semiconductors, let me go ahead and take a look. Q, same thing. Still a very, very good short position right there. Semiconductors. It can push up into this upper Bollinger. I would be a little concerned about that. Um, but with some of the price action we are seeing within SPY and QQQ, that should cause it to reject. VVIX, we are looking for it to buy upward. It's kind of Waiting right now for that to occur. Now, I want to make a mention too is that someone earlier said that, this is the type of conditions where you can buy that call upside and we talked about that on the open how potentially this could have been a very quality call. However, with the overall conditions on the day being bearish for me, I didn't like that call upside. Okay. Doesn't mean that it wasn't there. Obviously those calls would have been absolutely blaring right now, but that's just something that I don't trade for. If I see bearish conditions on the day, ideally I don't want to be targeting bullish contracts into bearish conditions because all it takes is, a data set or something. And granted, I know there's not data coming out today. We don't have really much data for the next 2 days until NVIDIA earnings, um, which to me can allude to that we could see a lot of this buying taper out, okay, which would really show that this 5 mod test would be rejected and we would start really ideally looking towards that lower Bollinger. You're very, very welcome. Yeah, and that's what I always suggest to people too, is that as traders, and this goes for literally anybody. This doesn't matter, if you're just some average retail trader or if you're literally the best trader in the world. Every trader is going to be trading different. What I see in the charts and the price action and everything, I can teach you guys how to see that exactly the same way as me, and very, very likely you will still never see it the exact same way as me. Just like I will never see, the exact same trades that, everybody else sees. This is what makes trading really a great opportunity. Even with AI being involved with trading and everything, is that we all have massive opportunities to be very good at it. And um, it's always good to use, potentially the signals and opinions and stuff that I'm seeing and use that for your own trading so that if you're, for example, bullish today, you can hear, all my reasons of why I'm bearish, and you can help use that to build a thesis of, oh, well, maybe I won't be so bullish on the day with all these bearish conditions present. Potentially that could save you, potentially not. Today we're seeing how calls would have been doing very, very well. Um, so far today we're not selling off like I'm fully expecting us to. So, you know, it's always good to take different opinions from, many people that you do trust. And it's not about if everybody else trusts them or not. It's about whether you trust them in it and if their thesis helps benefit your trading. So, if my signals can help benefit your trading and everything, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Um, a lot of people think that you know we're wanting people to just copy how we trade and everything, and that's not the goal. Ideally, you'll be able to trade without my signals and everything else. Still just seeing this tapering up at the top here. Still just seeing that tapering. Not really expecting a jump back up from this 5 minute upper Bollinger from the upper Bollinger to the 5 mod back up to the upper Bollinger. It can happen, but generally we see the upper Bollinger to the 20 mod. So ideally, the short position is still very present. I would still be holding that position, even though currently I'm not taking these positions. I do have to go in a few minutes, or else I 100%. would have taken those shorts there. That's exactly the type of short position that I look for. VVIX being pushed into the lower Bollinger again does allude to that it can be buying to the upside very soon here, because generally, again, like any symbol pushed to the lower Bollinger, generally you see very large buying. When you push into the upper Bollinger, generally you see selling. So with this pushing into the lower Bollinger, that is creating the conditions that we can see the bearishness really pick up on the day very soon here. So I'm very cautious on being bullish here. Um, Again, this is kind of what I'm alluding to with the being bullish and a bearish type of day, is that potentially there's the signals that can absolutely cause us to just plummet. Um, and I don't like buying calls into that because I've been there before and it's not fun. It really sucks buying calls into a day that just absolutely dumps on you. So, ideally, I want to try to prevent everybody from doing that. Just like I want to prevent, um, you know, buying puts into a bear or into a bullish day. So it's like, yes, we're seeing some bullish price action within the actual day, but overall, um, there's so many bearish conditions that are present that I just don't like buying the calls into the upside. The USD JPY is super, super, super elevated here. And I wonder if I have the drawings on here. I do. So on the weekly time frame, just to really kind of correlate this to everything, when we have the USD JPY up at this level, um, we've seen massive unwinds occur due to that. So it's extremely elevated. It hasn't unwound. Um, Pretty much just waiting to be pushed downward into an unwind. And we see that within the actual yen. And just to very, very briefly, you know, explain what an unwinding is. I know I explained it earlier, but basically they sell securities to get a hold of a lot of the dollar. And with the dollar, they go and buy the yen. That's what causes it to push back upward. So that's what these unwinding events are, caused to, or, intended to do, is to strengthen the yen. And with the yen being pushed down so low, it's really in the position to um do that again. So that's why I'm seeing a lot of bearish signals. I really am not set on trying to chase this upside just yet. If the upside's present, um, we'll start seeing a lot better signals than what we're seeing currently. That's just how I see it anyway overall. I don't think the 2-year bond will impact the market today. Truthfully, a lot of the buying that we've been seeing in TLT and the long end has been really a lot of foreign buyers rather than domestic buyers. The reason why I say that is because the overall data and news narrative hasn't been um, indicative of buying the long end. So who else would be buying it? Very likely the Bank of Japan. You know, again, just going over the whole yen carry trade, is that this is what they like to be in when um, everything starts selling off, because this is what's going to gain is the long end treasuries. So, um, I don't really anticipate the 2-year auction here doing anything. I do expect it to pull downward in terms of the yield, but it doesn't really have any major implications on the overall market right now. If we weren't seeing the Bank of Japan needing to unwind positions a little bit, I think that TLT would very, very likely still be around that 87 range. Yeah, it's a shame that we weren't able to enter gold calls this morning. Those would have been Absolutely great. NVIDIA creating that cup and handle I talked about earlier. Again, that can take a lot of the weight on the day, so just be very, very cautious of that. Again, once we're pushed into this upper Bollinger, that's still the area to short for me. Same with SPY here. We're still seeing quite a bit of tapering. USD JPY starting to pull down, which can be indicative of some form of unwinding. Now, this is on the 5 minute time frame, so it doesn't hold a whole ton of weight, but that is something to pay attention to. The VVIX did pull down all the way to the 110.81, but it is starting to taper away from that lower Bollinger, which is sort of alluding into that it can start pulling back upward, which would indicative or be indicative of selling within the SPY tech semiconductors and everything else. RSP, we did see pull up towards that 203.52, and this is the basically is the SPY equal weight. So I am looking for selling in this. This will be very indicative that there will be selling throughout the rest of tech and semiconductors. Go ahead and take a look at Bitcoin really quick. Seeing potentially a little bit of a head and shoulders forming here. We are looking for Bitcoin to sell because not that it has a one-to-one correlation with equities, it doesn't, but it does hold a little bit of a correlation to what the dealers have in mind overall. I am still holding my Apple short. I'm very set on that so far. And yeah, if there's no last questions, then I will end the stream here. Let me go ahead and check. Yeah, if there's any other questions, let me know and I'll be happy to answer. But if not, I will go ahead and end the stream very, very soon. But overall, I do still see all of our bearish signals present. Yes, we're seeing some buying within the actual price action on the day, but I do think a lot of this is going to taper out. Losing my voice, so I apologize if it's sounding like I'm turning into a zombie a little bit. Um, I just kind of want to go over this very, very quickly before I end this. Um, the 5 mile is at 685.69. Basically, the price action or the current market price is right at that level. Um, a rejection from this range would be very indicative of a push into the lower Bollinger. If we start seeing the VVIX starting to climb while we're at this 5 mile range, that it's very likely going to tell you that we will be rejecting that range. If we continue to see the VVIX pull downward while we're at this 5 mile range, then that will be very indicative of, not rejecting that range and instead buying that range up to the upside. So overall, I am bearish on the day. I do think that we will reject, but you know, just be prepared that potentially we could be pulling back out of it. That's how these 5 mile tests can work. The 5 mile is a very, very um crucial and key range to build support at. So if there's ever going to be support really built, it will be at that 5 mile range. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Um, Not seeing any final questions, so I will be going ahead and ending the stream here. I am still holding my Apple puts. I will be holding those. I'm not seeing a reason to cut those just yet, unless we start, again, having some major upside. My Weeble decided to crash, so that's telling me it's time to cut the stream out anyway. Um, Perfect timing. So, okay, everybody, going to end the stream here. Take care. Have a great day. If you have any questions about anything, make sure you leave a comment on my videos. I will be putting a video out tonight, and yeah, hopefully the rest of the day's trades go very well, and very likely I do expect that bearish push downwards. So, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making the stream very nice.